You are watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
I'm just in shock. There are neighborhoods where every other house has a tree on it or through it.
Helene wreaks deadly havoc across the southeast. How many are still unaccounted for as floodwaters wash away roads, homes, and memories? Then escalation fears grow as Israel prepares a ground invasion inside Lebanon. The moves the Pentagon is making to draw the U.S. closer to the conflict. And the $1 deal. DirectTV has finally bought out its competition for next to nothing. But there is a catch that's costing them billions of dollars. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. At least 120 people killed, 600 missing, as millions more now deal with the damage left in the wake of Helene, the storm that made landfall in Florida last week as a hurricane before then ripping through the southeast, overnight battering Georgia along with North and South Carolina. The effects not done with the region quite yet.
The rivers are still rising, so the danger is not over. The flooding is likely not over.
And that was Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, home to one of the hardest hit areas overnight in Buncombe County and Asheville City. 35 deaths reported alone after more than 30 inches of rain were dumped on that state. Some of the images, you can see them right here, of that widespread flooding, washed out roads, downed trees. About an hour east in Boiling Springs, the debris left behind massive. Some residents deeply concerned about how their neighbors will be rescued.
There's no way in or out via car, barely human. I mean, helicopters only had a few spots, just a few, maybe only 2 or 3, where they could safely actually land.
Tonight, North Carolina business owners equally battered. One artist in Asheville says the damage was so bad, she's decided to close up shop.
I'm done. Curve Studios as an entity will not exist anymore. And that is an incredibly sad thing. I look forward to a positive future. It's just Mother Nature said it's time to move on. So I'm going to listen.
Also hard hit, Georgia and South Carolina, those two states with the most people in the dark right now. And at last check, South Carolina, that was leading the pack with over 700,000 power outages. Georgia north of 500,000, North Carolina just over 400,000, and then those were followed by Virginia and Florida. At its height today, more than 2 million households and businesses were without power. Colossal damage as meteorologists track more tropical storm activity in the Atlantic. Currently, there are 5 storms on the National Hurricane Center's radar, including Tropical Storm Kirk, that could become a hurricane by tomorrow. But that storm is not a threat to land just yet. The possible storm to watch out for is just south of Cuba, east of the Yucatan Peninsula in the Caribbean seas, just about where Helene formed before growing into a Category 4 hurricane. The National Weather Service says right now there is a 40% chance this disorganized group of thunderstorms could develop. The shelter-in-place advisory in Conyers, Georgia, has been extended indefinitely. More than 90,000 residents have been ordered to stay indoors with air conditioning off and windows and doors shut after a chemical plant caught on fire yesterday. The fire is now out, but chemical gas was released into the air. The EPA says it is monitoring the air for chlorine and related compounds. The cause of that fire is still unknown. More than 100,000 Verizon customers say they lost cell service today. Reports of outages began at around 9 a.m. Eastern time all across the country from New York to California. Most of the impacted people were on the East Coast. Reports into down detectors say these customers could only use their devices in SOS mode. Verizon says they are aware of the issue and have been working to identify and fix the problem. Tens of thousands of dock workers along the east and Gulf coasts are preparing for a potential strike to begin later on tonight at 12:01 a.m. specifically. That's technically Tuesday morning. The ports impacted play a major role in the nation's supply chain, so a strike could cause real economic disruptions depending on how long it lasts. The National News Desk's Atrel Nashar has a closer look.
Ports that account for more than 40% of the country's container trade could soon come to a halt over gridlocked contract negotiations between a major dock workers union and shipping companies.
When my men hit the streets, from Maine to Texas, every single port will lock down.
The president of the International Longshoremen's Union illustrating the economic leverage of their tens of thousands of workers.
First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down. They can't get the goods from China.
The union says it will continue to handle military cargo. Passenger cruise ships will also be unaffected. In preparation, some companies have been front-loading shipments, but according to Oxford Economics, for each week a strike goes on, it will take a month to clear the backlog. At the Port of Baltimore, shipping volume still isn't totally back to where it was before the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. Now, workers are bracing for another disruption.
Especially with farm and agricultural equipment, getting it out to the Midwest, it's quickest coming through Baltimore.
A top concern is a strike straining supply chains to the point of pushing up inflation. It would take a while for prices to be impacted, Oxford Economics says, but there could be temporary job losses, not just for striking workers, but also those hit by its disruptions.
Now, the president does have the authority to intervene and suspend a strike for an 80-day cooling off period. But President Biden, who boasts himself as the most pro-union president in history, says he will not take that step.
And Atra, what do we know about the administration's other involvement in these negotiations?
Right. It's not like they're totally hands-off here. They're wary of the economic impact of a potential strike. And we've learned, Amira, that Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Acting Labor Secretary Julie Su, and the Director of the National Economic Council, Lael Brainerd, are all in touch with the union and the shipping companies, actively encouraging them to return to the table and negotiate in good faith. Now, the White House reiterated their belief that collective bargaining is the best way for the two sides to reach a fair agreement, certainly a nod to the unions. And we know the president is staying regularly updated.
All right, we'll have more on this as the week progresses, that's for sure. Atrel Nashar reporting live for us from Washington, D.C. Thank you. Over in Washington state, meantime, Boeing employees who are now on day 18 of their strike are about to lose their health care benefits tonight. Union leaders said negotiations stopped after the latest session on Friday and no more talks are scheduled. Boeing's latest proposal included a 30% pay raise over 4 years, below the union's demand of 40% over 3 years.
Starting wage is $18 an hour. I can't live off that. With rent, food, gas, if they want the quality that they want and the speed that they want it, we should be getting paid for that.
Boeing's website says union members who go back to work tomorrow or later will have their insurance reinstated. Developing now, the United States is sending an additional few thousand troops to the Middle East. The Pentagon, not specific on just how many, but said the forces would be there to bolster regional security and that they were prepared to defend Israel if necessary. It comes as Israel's Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, said today, quote, the next stage in the war against Hezbollah will begin soon. U.S. officials have confirmed Israeli forces are now operating inside Hezbollah-controlled southern Lebanon. President Biden said he is aware of these operations and says that there's only one solution on the table.
I'm more aware than you might know, and I'm comfortable with them stopping. We should have a ceasefire now.
Israel has continued to strike deep into Lebanon. Israel saying they struck missile armaments located near the Beirut International Airport earlier in the evening. This after they say they killed Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah last week. and struck Houthi targets in Yemen yesterday, increasing the likelihood of an all-out regional war. The United States Embassy in Beirut, by the way, is working with airlines to get U.S. citizens out of Lebanon by providing additional flights with seats for personal purchase. The embassy issued a do not travel alert to U.S. citizens for entering the country over the weekend. This just in, women in Georgia will be able to get abortions up to 22 weeks of pregnancy now that the state's 6-week ban was struck down today. A judge in Fulton County reversed the law that was signed in 2019 and took effect in July of 22 after Roe v. Wade was overturned. It is the latest in a continuous legal battle over the issue in Georgia and across the country. Well, this is not a joke headline. The Babylon Bee is suing the state of California and Governor Gavin Newsom, saying its new laws banning deceptive content in political ads. The satirical online publication says this is an attack on parody and comedy, which is protected under the First Amendment. Newsom says the laws are necessary because AI-generated content could, quote, undermine the public's trust through disinformation. Lawyers for New York City Mayor Eric Adams want the bribery charges against him dismissed. They filed motions in court today saying his conduct does not meet the requirements for the charges and are not supported by the evidence. Adams pleaded not guilty to 5 counts on Friday, including accepting bribes from Turkish officials. The mayor, who is not resigning, will be back in court on Wednesday. The man accused of trying to kill former President Donald Trump at his West Palm Beach golf club on September 15th has pleaded not guilty to 5 charges, including attempted assassination. Authorities say a Secret Service agent saw Ryan Routh with a gun and shot at him before he then fled and got arrested. Routh is being held without bail. His lawyers have requested a jury trial. His next court date has not been announced. The FBI will pay more than $22 million to 34 women to settle sexual discrimination claims. That's according to a class action lawsuit that says female recruits at the FBI training academy were sexually harassed, singled out for dismissal, and judged more harshly. A 2022 internal watchdog report confirmed many of the allegations. If a judge approves the deal, it will be the biggest settlement in the Bureau's history. Coming up, what to expect from what could be a very impactful vice presidential debate tomorrow night. Then the program a breast cancer survivor just launched to help others who are battling the disease. And later, the factors that made evacuating from Hurricane Helene's path such a difficult decision for so many families. We'll be right back. Tomorrow night in New York City, vice presidential hopefuls Governor Tim Walz and Senator J.D. Vance go head-to-head in their only debate matchup. This one-on-one could be one of the most impactful vice presidential debates we have ever seen, in part because the tops of the ticket, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, have also only faced off once. The debate will be 90 minutes. Neither side will be allowed pre-written notes, and there will be no audience. One big difference between this and the presidential debates this year: all microphones will stay on for the entirety of the debate. The debate will be on CBS at 9 p.m. This, as we learned, the Washington Post reports at least a dozen employees at the Department of Veterans Affairs improperly accessed medical records for both vice presidential nominees. CNN says that about 2 months ago, an employee at the VA Inspector General's office reached out to Senator J.D. Vance to alert him of the breach. A Harris campaign spokesperson said it was also informed about a breach for Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. An investigation is now underway. President Joe Biden says he is headed to Asheville, North Carolina on Wednesday for a briefing and aerial survey of the destruction by Helene. He said he remains in constant contact with governors and local leaders on the response, but storm relief is now taking center stage on the campaign trail. National correspondent Matt Gelka has more on how both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump have shifted their plans to respond to the damage.
I want them to know we're not leaving until the job is done. I also want you to know I'm committed to traveling to the impacted areas as soon as possible.
The president says he plans to travel to North Carolina Wednesday or Thursday to support one of the hardest hit states that was in the path of Hurricane Helene. He said he was waiting to be sure a visit wouldn't disrupt emergency response efforts. The storm's death toll passed 100 across several states as many more remain unaccounted for. Former President Donald Trump was in Valdosta, Georgia for the recovery efforts there. Trump had previously called out both Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, saying Biden was on the beach instead of responding to the storm, and Harris was too busy fundraising.
But they're having a very hard time getting the president on the phone. He won't get on, and of course the vice president, she's out someplace campaigning, looking for money. So they have to be focused over here. It's too big.
But Harris changed up her campaign plans because of the storm, pledging to give states everything they needed before leaving Nevada early to attend FEMA briefings.
I want to thank everyone for doing everything you can to think about them, send them your thoughts, send them your prayers. I want to thank the first responders who have done so much.
The historic storm is eventually going to come with a price tag. The president said he's considering calling Congress back from recess in order to authorize more disaster relief money, but they don't know the total cost of the damage yet. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Matt, thank you. The maker of Jeep and Ram is expecting to make a much lower profit this year than it was before. Stellantis cut its forecast today, a move driven by declining global sales, increasing Chinese competition, and other factors. The car maker predicts its operating profit will be 7% of sales at best, down from its previous forecast of over 10%. On top of that, the UAW recently threatened another strike, accusing Stellantis of not upholding promises it made in contracts from last year. After years of flirting with a merger, tonight DirectTV has agreed to buy rival Dish Network. Under the deal, DirectTV will pay Dish's owner EchoStar just $1 in exchange for assuming its billions of dollars in debt. Both companies have struggled to keep customers as streaming platforms like Netflix, Hulu, and Prime Video gain traction. The merger would have to get the green light from the government. In 2002, a similar merger was blocked over anti-competition concerns. In your health alert, Breast Cancer Awareness Month kicking off tomorrow and this October. In honor of that critical month, one survivor still in treatment is choosing to pay it forward. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares how she's helping others stay strong.
Hey there, everybody. She is a breast cancer survivor who is on a mission to help others this awareness month. It is why she recently launched Santrina Strong.
Santrina Strong is a nonprofit to help those with cancer get support with holistic therapies and oncology nutrition.
The kind of nutrition Santrina knows makes a difference when you need to take charge of your own health. Santrina's most recent power move as she fights metastatic disease in her breast cancer journey, ovary removal surgery at her own request.
This power move was taking away my ovaries so that I didn't have as much estrogen production, so we're not feeding that cancer anymore.
Santrina is a nurse practitioner who owns Kentucky's Derma Lounge. She's had so many that have helped support her use of complementary therapies through a GoFundMe campaign.
No one has fought harder than Santrina has. She's so strong and she's so amazing, and she continues to fight, and she's going to beat this for sure.
She's now decided to pay it forward. Through items like these she'll raffle off at an upcoming anniversary celebration. She'll help the next woman who needs to perhaps get the same kind of support, take a yoga class, or have some other form of holistic health.
Sometimes it's unaffordable for people.
Santrina's other mission, of course, is to remind all of us that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it is a great time to talk to your medical team about the right time to schedule a mammogram, especially if you are age 40 or older. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
All right, Liz, thank you for that. Now, if you're on Medicare, good news for you. Hundreds of thousands of Medicare patients across the U.S. will be seeing lower prices on dozens of prescription drugs. Today, the Biden administration announced Medicare Part B enrollees will pay less for 54 prescription drugs. Many of those drugs are used to treat cancer, osteoporosis, pneumonia, and other conditions. The cuts are possible through a provision in the Inflation Reduction Act, making drug companies pay rebates if they raise Medicare prices faster than the rate of inflation. Patients will start seeing those price drops this week. And coming up, how a church in Myrtle Beach is helping flood victims impacted by Hurricane Helene. Stay with us. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in South Carolina, where a church is providing critical support after Helene.
Dr. Timothy Carter is the pastor of the Sunshine Recovery Ministry. He says they are bringing a crew of around 19 people to set up the relief effort in Banner Elk and at the Baptist Children's Home in North Carolina. He tells me his ministry got a call yesterday asking for their help.
Oh, I got a call from emergency management, city manager, and lieutenant governor's office in North Carolina.
He says within a few hours, he partnered up with multiple churches and got the ball rolling.
The first thing we're going to do when we get there, we have a children's home, the Baptist Children's Home there. I get real emotional with that because of how I grew up, but they got 100 children up there with no food, no water, and 200 trees down on their property. So we have an emergency squad of helicopters landing. I'm sending up a truck tonight to meet with them to go up and assess.
For many families, evacuating their homes was a difficult decision, both emotionally and financially.
$1,000 for 3 nights is about average for what we have to pay fuel driving here, with a diesel truck, then you're pulling a camper, and then the cost of food and stuff like that. So you're looking at over $1,000 for a couple nights stay.
A study done by Penny Hoarder magazine found hurricane evacuees could spend between $1,200 to $5,000 to ride out the storm. The highest cost coming from hotels and Airbnbs. The Splash RV Park in Milton discounted their rates for evacuees. Park management said lots quickly filled with RVs from the Big Bend region, including Nathan Long, his family of 4, and 8 pets.
We grabbed the photos, we grabbed, kind of the things we could replace, and made sure we had those with us.
We go to the doctor, we get the swab. Right. What happens to it could be that it comes here.
Correct. This is DC's Public Health Lab in Southwest Washington. Deciphering diseases and labeling viruses goes beyond COVID and flu. The scientists can detect cases of Mpox, rabies, measles and mumps, and foodborne pathogens. After identification, it's broken down by strain type and DNA sequence.
You just think of we all have fingerprints. That viruses and bacteria, they kind of have patterns. In the case of foodborne, we look to see if it matches any current foodborne outbreaks.
When it comes to the deadly boar's head listeria outbreak, so far no DC cases are connected. But this is the first place that will know if that changes.
Coming up, a big announcement from Oasis, the band that recently announced it was reuniting after 15 years. We'll tell you more about it on the other side. Very exciting news for Oasis fans. The makers of Wonderwall bringing its reunion tour to North America next year. They are scheduled to play in Toronto, Chicago, East Rutherford, New Jersey, Los Angeles, and Mexico City, with Cage the Elephant as the opener. And you can register for pre-sale on the Oasis website, and general ticket sales start on Friday. The band, you may remember, announced that it was getting back together this summer after a 15-year hiatus after the brothers in the group, Liam and Noel, had a big falling out, but it seems like they have rekindled their relationship, which is very, very important. We're excited to see them. And the tour, it kicks off in the UK on July 4th. That does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.